the motivation of writing this book, it actually grew slowly after me moving to Brazil 20 years ago. What I realized over time is that there is so much about the Nordic tradition in terms of what we could call sorcery and witchcraft that is not too much known or overlooked and in favor of the acid and all this more Germanic approach and bigger themes in the Nordic tradition. But I think the more practical things, working with the land, with land spirits, with the fylgja, with this more the domestic cult, the personal and private practice, was not much written about this, except in light of roots. So, rereading a lot of this Norse material in Brazil, it started to grow this this desire of presenting a more treasure house of what we can actually find in the north of Europe, and also is. When it comes to this, comes to runes and cider and these practices that are more known, also wanted to give a more visceral, more earthy, more should we say, more personal take on this as well. So the book came into being little by little by rereading a lot of books on trolldom and other things related to the Northern tradition. And I think over time, by being here in almost in the South Pole, looking back at the mysteries of the North Pole, some kind of a new perspective, a wider perspective, came into place, and I wanted to share this. So the book grew slowly forth, and when I started composing the book, it was very much to kind of honor my own roots and give my appreciation of my Nordic roots in the form of a book. Because it's kind of amazing how perspective, you know, in terms of geography and time, you tend to spin a very wide web and present you with a very rich vision of everything available. Because I have to say, when I lived in Norway, I don't think I managed to see all these depths in the Northern tradition as I managed to do after migrating. So it's really me trying to give back to my ancestry and my roots in the form of sharing my love and appreciation for my heritage. Good question, and absolutely important for the composition of this book as well, because in Brazil and in Africa, Cuba, I always had this pull, this interest in what I call living traditions. So if I speak about Voodoo or Ifa, Umbanda, Kimbanda, all these are living organic cults that are in transition, they are fluid, they are changing all the time. So for sure, it's with this book as well, is working with this material down here from this perspective of, well, also the Northern tradition is living, you know, when we go out there in the woods and we call the Veteruva place to make a connection. it's not a static mechanic thing. It is we are interacting with the true living forces that we interact with in a unique and unique way. So this perspective, for sure, I took with me, and here and there you can even find some exotic correspondences here and there, because like in Norway, favorite trees to work with, rowan. Well, you don't have, so you have to find a substitute. Alder, don't have, you have to find a substitute. So I didn't took this too far, but there are some examples here and there on how these kind of how a plant or a tree, how a natural phenomena can stand in for something that was originally north. So I do believe this kind of migrations potentially can enrich very much the practice in both senses. Like the Nordic heritage has also given me some unique perspectives within the cults and traditions I'm working with here. So absolutely. Most important, I think, is this this sense of that the spirituality, the traditions we are working with are alive, living, not fixed and static. It's very much reproducing the same, right? So I think I hope that it's at least this contribution I made here is a contribution to have this more flexible living perspective upon the Northern tradition, and in this way, it's possible to make it more not in vogue, but more interesting, because reading or doing the same in the same way, because there is no advancement or growth in the tradition. For many people, at least for me, it gets a bit boring. So where's the knowledge? Where's the understanding? Where's the growth element in this? So and also we have from anthropological perspective, it also depends a bit on where the interests are at the time. And I guess for you from Sweden and from me, originally is this familiar material is not so very the exotic always calls more attention. I think it's about this, and also in revisiting and making a material like the Northern observation have some new blood and getting more interest. It's about finding this crossover between being true to the sources, being true to the tradition, avoid making things up, but allow this this growth, this newer aspects, the living aspects to come through actual work with the material. I don't know if it was so much about saving as it was about an interest among the clergy and a thing that happened in its own dynamic and living way. Because actually this this transition, this period of the Black Books, before this, the Reformation, 1530s and onwards, I think is the most interesting historical time in Scandinavia and Iceland, because here, so Scandinavia, Catholic, all of a sudden Protestant, But what is kind of interesting is that this new theology, it was not really implemented in all of Scandinavia in a very orderly way. If you were living in the outskirts, far away from urban centers, it was very difficult to get trained in this new theology. And at the same time, what the church did in Scandinavia was to send priests and bishops to Germany to be trained in Lutheran theology, where they got in touch with these black books and the tradition of Faust. And so this Reformation in Scandinavia, in the north, also revitalized our whole black book tradition, and it was a very vibrant period. And it was just later when the church realized that, my God, we have a lot of heretic priests. We have to enter here, do something, and they wrote down and they hid in the altar, in the church, in the attic of the church, everywhere. So, in a way, yes, they preserve it, but in a very vibrant, a bit chaotic, beautiful way, I think. I think my impression, at least, is that to a large extent the Protestant Reformation managed to diminish the traditions of thraldom and runes very much in Scandinavia. Of course, it never disappeared completely, even to this day. And like Johannes, that you know, in Sweden, his work in preserving these genuine traditions is such an important work that he has done, because in the past, when I was younger, I of course met people that were upholding customs of the family or the farm and doing this and that, but it was hard to find people that were conscious about this treasure that they were preserving, because it was something they did very often related to farms. My mother's side is a lot of priests and farmers up in the central part of Norway, and they did a lot of folk magic, very, very Christian, and it was kind of preserved there as a kind of, but this is the way that we always did. This is good to keep the tomte happy on Christmas. It's good to do this because, you know, it's better to make these horses happy and not mess with this. So to a certain extent, I think Christianity contributed to destroy a lot of the memory of why things were done. At the same time, the practice was were continued, right? And for me, if you look at this historically, up to 15th century, there was no big laws against making what we call paganism or hedonism forbidden in Scandinavia, as long as you kept it private, right? But with the Protestantism and all this heretic clergy, the laws changed. So I think the change of the law with the more Inquisition in the north, this memory started to kind of evaporate in the 15th, 16th, 17th century. But thanks to the black books, and that priests started to write things down, that wise ones started to write things down, and even publishing, and we have a preservation of this this legacy in the form of written culture. And this is a good part of Christianity. That was a religion of the book itself. So literate people could then write down and preserve this legacy for the future. So, it's difficult to say that Christianity was just bad. Yeah, it was bad, but at the same time, also help to preserve. And when things get forbidden, you have to use what is legal to still give meaning to what you are doing, and try to hide what you are doing. Is kind of, I think, these kind of messy constellations are kind of beautiful when you start to untangle. When you are living a tradition or living a faith, nature becomes alive. So these various creatures, if it's Draugr or Nøkk or whatever it is, depending on where you are living, is in the ocean or in the woods, this proximity with nature, it makes nature come alive. So for me, I think everything starts like this. If you are working with a living tradition connected to nature, that is, you need to find your tree, find your plant, and in resonating and connecting with these silent spirits, all the spirits that are tied to these same items that you're gravitating towards and is establish a connection with, is started to make themselves known to you. So it's also very interesting to see the sort of mythological beings or nature beings in a culture. I think they describe very much the nature of the soul of the people, and the essence of this nature that that you are working with. So as you see in Norway, it's a lot of these nature spirits are dangerous, protective, a bit volatile, and I think this really just represents the feel of Scandinavian nature, taking form and taking shape. I mean, in the British Isles, you have fae and fairies, and in Norway we have trolls. So I think this really speaks a bit about the temperament of the land. Absolutely, each land has a different vibration, energy, and it's important to connect with these energies where you are living. So for you living now in England, I think it's important for you to understand this vegetation, the trees, the plants, the forces, the history, the mythology, the tradition around you. Because if you manage to connect with the spirits of a new land, we also manage to understand better the spirits of our old land. Again, this thing with the perspective. Because for me, this was really something that made my life and my magical life much richer. This kind of straddling different worlds and continents. Speaking of land, this is a weird thing. When I was living in Norway, I was always very restless. I had to travel all the time and see other things. In Brazil, no. It was the first country I felt, no, I can make new routes here. And this might be that is here in Brazil, the landscape, the nature, is so varied. So you can, from state to state, you have new mythologies and new energies. And sometimes I think the Scandinavian nature and temperament is the darkness and the coldness and can be a bit too much sometimes. So I can imagine that it's good sometimes to take a break from the trolls and visit the land of the fae. Well, for me, it's like this. I think that everything is connected, and when the stars are looking down upon Earth, they see trees. So I think there is a very strong connection here between these two phenomena. And for me as well, I've always been fascinated with stars and what they mean, and in my magical practice as well, they have always been important, stars and planets. And this chapter is really me trying to put together a plausible idea of how it might have been for Norsemen in the past wondering about the same things in whatever time. So this chapter, I'm very happy that you appreciated this. It's kind of, that's the part of the book that I was a bit more afraid of if would go down well with with readers, because really there's not so much written about it. Hence, back to what I'm telling about when we are living a tradition and we are trying to make these connections and resonances, and we are receiving this inspiration, these ideas, we try it out and we see, wow, it makes sense, it works. Okay, let's add this to the corpus of knowledge, and that should be ever growing. And for me, this chapter, I hope more people react in the same way as you, and can build upon this, right? These observations is also something that I want to follow up more ahead. But it's something with not taking things too far either. Is kind of I do like to have my feet on the ground, even having the writing with the head in the stars. I think it's like this, that every tradition that is very practical, we'd say that, so we are solving a problem. We know that this spiritual technology works. Let's do this, and it gives this and that results. Done. So for some people, this this practical approach is enough. But I think there is always a philosophy and a theology behind why these things are working. So it depends a bit on your inclination. If you are of this bent that you want to understand, or if you are satisfied with what works. I don't see anything wrong with either of this. And if you see what you are left with in terms of writings that describes the rituals of Cider, they are really practical, and it's like this and that, and to a certain level, we have to take these little pieces of information and try it out and see for ourselves how this might have worked for them, and from this we start to make sense and put together this philosophy or theology of that informs the practice. Yeah, because I'm not so sure if it's even possible or if it's useful, you know, to replicate something that was done in a given way 1,000 years ago. Well, times are changing. So using this using the technique, but understanding this, if you understand the technique and using this technique today, we might have to adapt, you know, to the time and to the elements available, because I do think it's important to find this kind of resonances between items, plants, things that were used in the past, maybe not have them anymore. So today, what would be a good substitute? Because if you are, it's actually something that grew on me after moving, right? As I told, it's kind of so. In Norway, I like to work with these and these plants, and these trees don't have here. So I planted, but didn't went very well because the climate is different. So this finding substitutes that resonates with the idea of what you were working with back in Norway became important. So I think the more we have this, should I say, I think why is the best question we can ask in our spiritual practice. So we are using this element, why? And in asking why, we are coming up with the hypothesis about why, an explanation. And then element 2 is kind of, I'm having a very scientific approach to these kind of questions, because I really do want to understand underlying philosophy and theology of what I'm doing. But I don't think it's very necessary for everybody. It really depends on our inclination. It's like here in Brazil. Let's take Umbanda. That is the most famous Brazilian religion. There's a lot of people in this cult, this tradition, that is solely occupied with, so I am working with this, I'm receiving my spirit, going into possession, I'm doing our working, and things are working. Good. Explanation, spirit took care of me. End of story. And then there are other people like me that want to understand everything that goes on in between, from the person starts to think about his mediumship to the result is happening. So yeah, it's really a very personal, individual about if you're is a hunger for knowing, or if the results are sufficient in themselves. It will be a gateway into all these mysteries, because as I told this, I think it has been, when people think about the Northern tradition, is Asi, and it's Asatru, and it's runes. But it's, and all this is good, but it's so much more to the Northern tradition. And I really hope that this book can open the eyes for the richness that we have in the North, and also I hope the book will inspire more production. Really, is that this work is the beginning of a practitioners and writers to follow up some of these threads laid down here, and explore them more, so we can have more attention and more preservation of the Northern tradition. So after the book was published, and I kind of went through it again, and that was exactly my impression as well. It's kind of, wow, it really managed to meet my expectation or my hopes for the book, that it would present the breadth and the breadth and the depth of the Northern tradition. For me personally, yeah, I think that if we preserve the nature around us and learn to live with and understand nature around us, to take care of it, we are also preserving a legacy and a memory of that land with the spirits. Because if as I'm thinking, that if you're wanting to work with a a faith or a tradition tied to nature, you also need to preserve this nature, because if you start cutting down the trees and turning everything into to fields and planting corns, and you're losing a lot of vital energies, and it's almost like the Vetir and all these nature spirits, they are tied to these plants and to these natural phenomena. And when you remove this, it's like they will have difficulties anchoring themselves into something, and they can't really do their work of fertility and protection, and the force itself kind of slides out in the soil, and it gets more and more difficult to even connect with these forces. But at the same time, I see this also as the times are changing. The world is going into a more materialistic, less spiritual, and more, what should we say, a more pseudo-spiritual way, where I see a lot of spirituality almost is a bit desperate and manic, is kind of because we need to have something, but where do we find that something? Because the something is gone. So yeah, I think that preserving nature and the memory of by preserving nature, by connecting to nature, we also preserve the memory of the world, and through this ourselves. So yeah. Yes, I have thought about that a lot myself, because basically we are speaking about powers, right? So if you look at the original setting of a farm, so you would have the Vetir, the protective spirits of the farm. You would have the tree that was protecting the farm. You would have spirits on the corners of the farm that would protect the farmland, and also mark the division between the realm of another Vetir, another supernatural protected being, a type of Geniloki. So, and then we have the dead ones, right? So in real olden days, you would build a farm, then the first builder of the farm, he would be buried there. He would go into communion with the subterranean spirits of that place, and make his network of protection for this farm. You see, very dynamic, very alive, very. So this veil between the living and the dead, we're not so thick as it is nowadays. So in order to find some of these qualities in a new setting, so you have to look for how you will then organize or plant these powers in your local environment or your place, right? So I think living in a city, in an apartment, okay, it's some challenges with this, but there are still things you can do, right? For instance, dirt from the grave of your ancestors is a good way of starting to build this connection. Having plants in your apartment, learning your own history, where you came from, bringing these elements into your living space, and start making a shrine a place of focus. And I do believe that somehow forces, not necessarily a Vetir as in the olden days, but this can be the beginning of creating a energetic and magical connection through physical elements that will stimulate memory, and through this connection. So I think it's more difficult, but it's not impossible. And I think it would be good if people took an interest in so with these limitations and with this and take it as a challenge. So how we do? We know that in the past it was like this and this. How we adapt to these new conditions? Ah, yeah. No, this the NAS community in Norway is in the 90s. It was very active. It's a very good group of people, and several of the people there was very involved in Norse mysteries and runes and Åsatrú. So these people, in spite of this being a tantric group, they also taught me so much about Nordic mysteries. So I decided that well, the group as a totality need to have their thanks for and hand in writing this book, because for instance the runic part, well, it's a lot in depth to this community in the 90s that this material exists. No, again, this kind of thing, guys, is so there you have a little tantric group in Oslo, but well, also dealing with our Nordic roots and traditions as well. It's apparently I always like this kind of, yeah, let's bring the other side of the world into this world. Ah, yeah, no, it's because if you really see, it's kind of so. Odin, the creator of the human race, if you see his genealogy, basically he was a troll. So, and not only this, is troll is related to mystery, to wisdom, to concealment, to knowing things. And you know, when the Asi wanted to know something, they went to the dwarves or the trolls, or you know. So for me, troll, even its negative connotation, yeah, it is troll man. You know, a sorcerer is a troll man, meaning he's a man that is in league with the trolls. So this is also this wordplay, troll rune, is also to give it the troll more this meaning they had before of sorcery and mystery and cunning. Personally, I have to say that I really don't work very much with Asia. I'm focusing more on the Norns with the sort of fate with. But of course, Odin is important because he's how I see him is kind of, it was his. He imagined the humans. He imagined our world, and he wanted to try to make a restoration of the chaotic world that he and his brothers destroyed, and do something beautiful and wonderful. But he knew that this kind of that element of chaos, it was there. He could never get rid of it, and I think Odin's role in the creation of humankind do explain a lot his moodiness, his wolves, and his poetry, and his travels, and his very ambiguous. This is he Moon? Is he Apollo? Is he Mercury? Is the what? This complexity of Odin. So. I see Odin as that human beings are really having a lot of the qualities of Odin, the hunger for knowledge, for understanding, for creating something good, but at the same time having this tendency towards darkness and destruction and confusion, because it's there embedded in the creation. first question in this regard is why? You know, for me, I think these syncretisms are helpful in terms of understanding the how two forces resonate with one another. But I think we need to be very careful. I'm not really on too friendly foot with syncretism as such. I do like synthesis, when one element or force is kind of just naturally over time merging with another principle, idea, force. Fine. I think it's interesting insofar as making a syncretism like what Bertillot did in this regard is to kind of, and Kenneth Grant as well, is that so there are some commonalities here in a shared principle, usually the trio life and Sephiroths, right? So it doesn't mean that they are the same. It's kind of it's important to focus on the power shared, right? That not that they are the same thing. It's kind of it's a shared power here, but they are reflecting this power in very different ways. Because for me, it's important to keep, you know, to have our to respect the culture and tradition that these forces grew up in, right? So just simply taking an idea, so you're reading about some exotic deity or something, aha, so this is a very mercurial thing, so it's like the Mercury, it's like this and it's like that. Okay, but then I would invite people, stay with it and ask yourself, why, right? And never go to a kind of jump to the conclusion that so Thor, hammer, Shango, hammer, Tiferet, Sam is the same. No, because we have a different mythology, different stories. You know, these forces like Thor in the Norse mythology, his histories, his interactions, his execution of this similar force is different than the use and execution of Shango with the same force. So I think it can be helpful in starting to understand the commonalities between ideas, powers, and so on. But it's always better to understand, you know, Thor in his Nordic environment, Shango in his African, and then diasporic environment. And in this way, you get a more deep, complete, and satisfying understanding of how these forces are playing themselves out in the world. And you also respect tradition. And I think this in itself will also give you more spiritual growth, because you avoided this kind of the easy jump is the same. Yes, I can. I did. Of course, I experimented with everything here, but I ended up finding that utesitte, to sitting out in nature, basically, you know, in Northern tradition, deep down is very simple. Go out there in the nature, find a place of power, feed the place, sit and wait. So for me, this has been the most integral way, even if it's kind of connecting with the acid or Vetir or forces. Well, yes, it's possible even here connecting with Vetir. It's just that it's the same force, but since the flora is different, the shape is different, but my basic practice is sitting out, is vigil. So I am feeling the feeding the spirit of the place with beer, wine, butter, milk, and honey. I am sometimes singing rooms, or I wait for inspiration to sing or recite something to connect with that power. And this is a practice that I'm using even to this. I'm sorry, the dogs. I don't understand what is going on here. It's kind of, there are so much locomotion out here in the jungle. There is never like this. They're also agitated. My God. So very Nordic temperament on the dogs. What are these strangers doing here? They don't belong. Thank you for the invitation, and very good speaking with you guys. I had a good time, and I hope I managed to present useful things in spite of all the external distractions. So.